I don't have much good news. Iodine doing very well. Vitamin A, to some extent, doing well. Risk of having a setback, but still on track. Anemia, no good news. And when it comes to dietary intake of mothers and children or women and children, there is no good news. This is the pathway with which Nutrition Innovation Lab or Agriculture, Nutrition and Health linkage is being considered in our health policies. We hope that if we improve our crops, gardens and markets, it will increase household food security and wealth. It will improve dietary intake, quality of life and services, and that way improve nutrition status of women and children, and it goes to the cycle of policy. I did this presentation in 2012 based on NDHS 2011 data, which said though exclusive breastfeeding was almost more than around 70%, complementary feeding initiated in 75%, overall only 24% of 6 to 12 months old were fed according to guidelines or recommendations for infant and young child feeding, and grains contributed to the maximum amount of food that we consumed. This is what we said in 2012. When we discussed about macronutrient-rich food intake, overall 64% of children less than 3 years of age were fed vitamin A-rich food, and 24% of children less than 3 years received iron-rich food, very low. And maternal food intake, 97% consumed grains, tubers 72%, legumes 54%, meat, fish and poultry 30%, oils and fat 21%, sugary food 12%. And vitamin A-rich vegetables and fruits were consumed by 65% of mothers. That was 2011. Very broad NDHS type of data, not very focused. And among mothers who reported consuming meat, fish, or poultry, highest wealth quintile, 45%, poorest, 23%, almost half. Great inequity. Similarly, milk. So those 30% mothers who said they were consuming, if you analyze, disaggregated the data, probably those who were relatively well off were consuming more milk and meat. So this was 2012, and it was the basis for starting collecting data from. So this is again. Now, we started with community studies to assess and monitor household food security, dietary intake, and nutrition status of preschool-age children and their mothers with measures of agricultural diversity, market food prices, and exposure to health, nutrition, and agricultural programs in Nepal. This was a longitudinal study, observational longitudinal study carried out at the same time annually, same season surveys. It was sampled to elucidate agroecological variations. 21 systematically randomly sampled VDCs, 7 per agroecological zones were included, and all households with children less than 5 years of age, children with household with children less than 5 years of age, or newly married women were included. And what did you see? What do you see? Same thing. Rice, dal, and vegetable oil consumed by almost every day or 2 or 3 times a day. When it comes to dairy, look at this. 2%, 2 to egg, dark green leafy vegetables, slight increase by 2016. Orange and yellow vegetable fruits, other vegetables slightly better, almost every day. Other fruits, but snacks. And similarly, look at this. Weekly intake frequency of micronutrient-rich vegetables. This is a crowded slide. I thought I should not use this, but there is no problem to read this because all the columns show 0. But there is slight improvement in women's intake. Dietary diversity was slightly better, but less than 40% of mothers were consuming food from 5 food items, food groups. And same story for children also. They were consuming rice, dal, vegetable oils. But when it comes to meat, poultry, dairy, eggs, almost none. And when it comes to micronutrient rich or vitamin A rich food, story is the same. Here also I don't need to elaborate on this slide. So, but there is some slight improvement if the households were producing dairy products or meat, poultry products. Their dietary diversity was slightly better compared to those who were not producing. So all this shows that over a period of 3 years, from 2013 to 16, since 2011, I have not analyzed or looked at the data for 2016. The situation is quite dismal with regards to dietary diversity and intake of different nutrient-rich food. So, same story, rice and dal is consumed with vegetable oil on an average every day. Vegetables are consumed on average once a day among women and on average every other day for children. Micronutrient-rich foods, fruits and vegetables combined are consumed once a day in children and twice a day in women. Animal source food are consumed once a week on average. And a dietary safety net, wherever there is program like homestead food production, there is slight improvement in intake of dairy and meat products. But that safety net is not yet in place, and this is possibly the chance that investments in homestead food production may show improvements in consumption of these home-raised nutritious food. So when we are talking about micronutrients, iodine and vitamin have different characters. Probably they can go through a national campaign program or fortification. For other micronutrients, situation is quite precarious, dismal, which we need to work on. Thank you for your kind attention.